I think everybody remembers the first time they tried to fly on their island in Skyblock. You'd probably started your island not too long ago and were very weary of falling into the void. And while you were holding sneak trying to place blocks one by one just to have some ground to stand on, your friend came in and asked why you didn't have any magical mushroom soup. And before you can even ask what that is, you're sent a trade request, given the magical broth, you drink it, and boom, you're flying. Okay, maybe not everybody remembers their first experience with soup, but mine stuck with me. Because way back whenever I just started Skyblock, I was first given soup while building my Asbestos Incorporated building. I was super cautious of falling into the void whenever building on my island, but at the same time I was doing these stupid parkour moves. And it was around that time that my friend stopped by and gave me a stupid amount of this magical mushroom soup that I'd never heard of. And yeah, that's pretty much whenever I realized your island is creative mode with extra steps. Whenever I actually got the soup, I initially drank it sparingly like a smart person. I did eventually fall into the void afterwards, and I learned that all of your flight duration goes away after that. And that wasn't the only problem with soup either. If you ran out of flight duration, even if you were floating over a block, the amount of time you spent in the air also counted as falling, so the instant you touched the ground, you would die no matter what. The soup at least came with a timer that told you whenever it was about to run out, but I wasn't always at my keyboard. But I did notice that every single death involved with soup was it running out of time. And this minor inconvenience was the catalyst to this all. Before this soup madness ensues, if you're enjoying the video, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribed. Also, here's a bar graph I found online. We're almost at 80,000 subs. Thanks for all the soup ort. I was confident enough that I wouldn't fall into the void and lose my hours of flight, so I half-heartedly started a goal to get a virtually infinite amount of flight duration. And by virtually infinite, I meant around 1,000 hours because the flight duration only goes down whenever you're on your island. And I never thought I'd be on my island for over 1,000 hours ever, but here I am. All of these things coming together were the early stages of such a gluttonous goal. Similar to the origins of getting #1 in farming XP, I wanted to sell my soul for the leaderboard way too early on in my Skyblock career. For the longest time, however, I only knew about magical mushroom soup, which gives you 2 minutes of flight duration per soup. 2 minutes at a time wasn't really gonna get me that far, so I figured it was pretty difficult to get a high flight duration. During this time, I was still watching a lot of tutorial videos, trying to immerse myself into the community. I always thought it was funny whenever I saw someone who had a disgustingly high amount of flight duration. As a matter of fact, it was whenever Technoblade got months of flight duration by drinking mystical mushroom soup. Mystical mushroom soup? Well, I've only heard of this magical mushroom soup, not this foreign broth. So I looked at mystical mushroom soup, found out that it gives you 200 minutes, and I decided, oh yeah, we can go way further with this. So I uploaded what was basically a Kickstarter for soup on my channel, and at this time I was already ridding the entire auction house of mystical mushroom soups by the stack. Not long after uploading that video, there was a lot of traffic on my island. Lots of people came to my island to help donate soups of all quantities, and with all of those people helping out, those very nice people might I add, came some very useful information. A few knowledgeable viewers actually came up to me and told me that I was basically getting scammed by the auction house, because buying a stack of mystical mushroom soup off of the auction house will set you back about 500,000 coins, whereas buying the materials from the bazaar is significantly less. Even some of the people I bought soup from came to my island and told me I was getting scammed by them. So I was like, ah yes, that's good to know, thank you. How could I ever repay you? After the flood of help I got soon after uploading the soup video, the donations for soup became a lot more tame and occasional. Which is to be expected, because soup becomes excessive at a certain point, I would know. But during this time period, I was farming cane and pumpkins all the time, which brought in so much more money I could use to buy soup with. Even while I was farming, some generous people would still stop by my island time to help out. I was grateful for whatever people gave, and for the first time ever in my time on Skyblock, I accepted straight up coins. But I kept the coins specifically for soup. There's no contraband here, I swear. I only accepted soup contraband. Bet you've never heard that before because it's stupid. Some people gave me 1 mystical mushroom soup. Some, a stack. Someone else gave me a few coins, all was appreciated. But then one day, I got a very unique donation, unlike anyone I've had before. 2 people I know, Cax and Ben Exists, worked together to recombobulate a mystical mushroom soup. So basically, they spent about 5 million coins on 1 soup. But instead of drinking it, I put it in an item frame to showcase it. And the item frame that I put it in was actually placed on a soup statue that I built to spread awareness. Awareness of this soup, I can't take myself seriously. But I stuck it on my island anyways for any new visitors that stop by and maybe want to help out. I also put a sign on the statue of my flight progress, but I updated it once a month because I'm bad, and it was smooth sailing from there. All that was left to do now was to play the waiting game. People were still donating, and I was constantly broke because I spent every single coin I could on soup. The hours were slowly creeping up by the thousands, but something happened whenever I was in the 200,000 range. Around this time is whenever cookies were released for Skyblock, which I've mentioned many times in my previous farming videos. I've talked about how the cookie favors getting XP while farming, but the cookie comes with one other feature I didn't mention. Cookies come with their own form of flight duration. Cookies became a necessity whenever they were released, and everybody buys them to keep the cookie buff going. And basically that led to everyone having flight duration, as long as they paid for the cookie every 4 days. So at this point, most people would agree that mystical soup became useless. But I didn't care. We were too far into the soup lore to give up now. Just kidding, this goal was always useless, it's just funny now. Cookies did make mystical mushroom soup useless, but they also seemed to favor it somehow. One of the perks included in the cookie buff prevents you from losing your flight duration to the void. So, cookies make flight duration completely useless, but they also protect you from losing flight durations. What? I don't know, but it heavily favored exactly what I was trying to do because now I could have the cookie buff and get stupid amounts of flight duration. And at this point, a lot of the quote-unquote hype for the soup goal had died down. I started doing a lot of work myself, spending tens of millions every week. All of this was happening in the background because those tens of millions of coins came from me whenever I was trying to get #1 in farming, and I sold hundreds of farmer boots. And over the next month or so, I slowly crept up past 400,000 hours. But around the 440,000 hour range, Skyblock had an update that was more or less minor, but towards the soup goal was a major problem. For as long as I could remember, the way you would make soup is by clicking to craft every single soup. You'd have to let it stack up on your cursor, because if you shift-clicked it, it wouldn't stack. Which means the best and pretty much only way I knew how to craft soup was to let it stack on your cursor. But this minor update specifically removed the ability to stack soup on your cursor. And that doesn't sound like much, but for how much soup had to be crafted and for how much that slowed it down, it would take way too long with this new update. After the update rolled out, I couldn't find a way to craft soup efficiently anymore. It was way too slow, and I figured, I guess the admins just hate me. I must have crashed the mushroom economy too much, and I was on the brink of giving up so far in. I eventually let people know of the bad news, on stream and on a temporary community post, but out of all those people that heard about it, a few bright minds came in to help. A few nice people actually found out that you can stack soup still, but you have to stack it manually. Basically how it works is you shift-click all of the non-stackable soup, and once it fills your inventory, you start stacking all of the soup into one slot, manually. Which means the soup dream was alive, but it also meant that it was gonna take like 4 times longer to craft. However, a few of my Skyblock friends were so nice and helped me craft soup in the meantime to make it way less agonizing. Before we reach the lifetime of soup, I think it's appropriate that we crunch some numbers to give context and perspective. First off, the 520,000 hours was decided by my approximate lifetime. I filled out the info for an online death calculator to give me some sort of number to work with. And after all the calculations, I was expected to live for about another 59 years, which is pretty much 520,000 hours. Now with the dark part out of the way, the second thing we need to worry about is the 200 minutes that each mystical soup gives you. If we take 520,000 hours and convert it into minutes, we get a measly 31 million minutes. And if you divide that by the 200 minutes you get for mystical mushroom soup, we get a grand total of 156,000 soups. And that's not even including the extra soups I had to drink since the timer always goes down when I'm online. Now that we know the total number of soup required for the goal, we can roughly calculate the amount of coins spent on it. For how much the prices have changed whenever buying the materials for soup, I'm just gonna round it to about 300,000 coins to make it easy. And if we take all of the soup required for the goal and the price for it, we get a grand total of 731 million coins spent on soup, at least. And again, that's the bare minimum amount of coins required to reach that goal. More was definitely spent. But the most important number is the amount of clicks it took to drink the soup, because I'm really tired of drinking soup now. Okay, being serious. I want to thank everybody who helped with this goal so much, because this goal wouldn't have been possible without that help. At the very least, 1,000 people have helped donate their soup towards this goal. And you people know who you are, so props to you. And I want to give my condolences to the bank accounts that have collectively spent over 700 million coins on soup. So I think we got everything covered now, but there was one last thing I needed to do before I reached the goal. Just as I was finishing my double chest's worth of materials, I was on the brink of 520,000 hours. I saved the best soup for last, the recombobulated soup that was gifted to me months before. I drank as the final soup and reached my goal. It was finally done. This had been a side project for the past 3 months, and I'm honestly tired of drinking soup. But at least a few things came out of it. I made a few friends that helped me out early on. I'm number one in flight duration by a light year. The person in second place has like 11,000 hours. Which is fair, because people care about flight duration even less than farming XP, so my number one spots kinda suck. I have an irreplaceable statue to remind me of the good times. This statue will forever... And lastly, I'm honored to have my name in the official Mystical Mushroom Soup Wikipedia page. Oh, what a great time to be alive. Speaking of living, what am I gonna do with all these hours? I mean, a flood of generous people helped out. My spot and flight duration's basically cemented after they updated soup crafting, and I could fly like just before. So, now what do we do? Now what do we do?
We wait.